Welcome back to the complete free Flutter course presented by yours truly, Ovidius Mazuru. So a few things. You might hear some noise from outside because it has just stopped raining, but it was raining quite heavily earlier. The microphone might pick that up if it starts up again. And you'll also hear my laptop working quite hard because I'm rendering the previous video. I just cut out some long blanks, for example, when I was looking for the correct icon from last time. But okay, so while that is processing, let's go ahead and do the stopwatch. So I'm exactly where I was last time. This looks fine. And the first thing I noticed when I was actually changing the video, when I was editing the video, was when I see it like this, I feel like the position is incorrect. When I was changing it last time, I felt like the position was correct. So I'm actually going to go ahead and change this back to what it was before. One here and one here. And yeah, I'm going to leave it like that maybe. There's a good chance I'll change it again later, but we'll see. That's not what we're focusing on. This is what we're focusing on. So first you'll notice the instant crash, and that was because we changed our buttons pause, play, and reset. And in fact, reset didn't even exist when we made the previous one. So I'm going to close all of these. Instead, what I want is stopwatch screen and stopwatch state, which was the provider. And by the way, in provider, I don't actually need to use the provider package because change notifier is coming from material.dart. The place I need the provider package, what that package actually gives me is this thing, the consumer stopwatch provider and the change notifier provider. So it's this and this, for which I need the provider. So you need that in the stopwatch screen, not the stopwatch states, which I call stopwatch provider over here. But putting that aside, so the first thing I need to do is change play button. And the play button here is the big one at the beginning. So I'm going to give this a size of 200, like that. And previously I had the center in the play button, but because I wanted to change different things about it, that no longer made sense. So I'm going to have to add it here instead. And there we go. And yeah, that looks okay. I want to add the pause button first. I'm wondering how much of it I should actually pull out. Let me have a look. I could pull out all of this into its own widget and then pass in this, pass in this and this. And in fact, I could just pass in the state. No, because the value here is going to be different. This one has value and stopwatch screen does not have value. On stopwatch screen, it would just be state dot is running. Okay, so I'm going to pull out all of that and see how we get on. So I'm going to extract widget and let's call it, what am I calling it? Play or pause, or let's just say timer running with bottom button. That's a mouthful. And it wants me to pass in the state, but that's not what I want to pass in. I'm going to get rid of this and see what breaks, so I know what I need to remake. Should I call it display string, which is going to be my state display string.value here. And add required display string here. And that is going to be a string, of course, isn't it? Yeah. String, display string. And this should actually have final in front of it, like that. So then here I just have display string. And again, same as the last video, I haven't actually tried all this before recording this, so I might have a few bugs which we can iron out together. So next I need an is running, so I need whatever this is. Is running, which is going to be, in this case, state.isRunning.value. And in my stopwatch screen, it's just going to be state.isRunning. So then at required is running, final bool is running. And sorry that my laptop is slower than usual. I hope the recording is going to come out okay. It doesn't say anything's wrong, but maybe the quality will be really bad. It's the first time I'm recording while also rendering, because this takes a really long time and I just don't want to wait that long. Yeah, so here we're going to use just is running directly, like this. Here again, is running. And then I need pause and play. So pause or unpause is more accurate. Why does this give me an error? Because I didn't put this before these. This dot display string, this dot is running. And that's going to get rid of my errors. But now I need a final function pause, pause func, final function unpause func. And here at required, this dot pause func, at required, this dot unpause func. And maybe you guys can think of a better name. I cannot. I am terrible at naming things. Unpause. So now here I'm going to add the extra comma, Control-Shift-I to format it like this. So I can just add these here. Pause func will be state.pause, and unpause func will be state.unpause without those brackets at the end, but VS Code gives it to me automatically with the auto suggest. So that should be it. And now that I have this, I should be able to put all of this in a separate widget. So here, new file, I'm going to call it timer running with bottom button. And that was all incorrect, because when using the names, we need to use the underscores. Timer underscore running underscore with underscore bottom underscore button dot dot. And I know that's a really long name, but I prefer to err on the side of having longer names which are meaningful than short names which are not meaningful. We need to import material, and that's going to, and also import the pause button and the play button. Control-Shift-I, fix imports, and save it. Now in the timer screen, I'm going to need to import that widget I just created. And I'm actually just going to check to see if it's working correctly before we move on. Sorry, things are working slower than usual because I'm doing too much. Now I'm just testing to see if things work correctly. Pause works. Unpause. And I haven't changed the reset button, so there's no reason why that would be broken. That's all good. And now when I go to stopwatch, it doesn't crash anymore because I updated this. Now in my stopwatch screen, here, Do I still want the center? I don't think I want the center anymore, do I? I'm going to return my, I forgot what I called it. A timer running with bottom button, like this. Display string will be state dot elapsed time string. Then I'm hoping it can format it so I can see all of it. Is running is going to be whatever this is. State dot is running. My pause func is going to be state dot pause, which I think I already created, but I just haven't fleshed out, and state dot unpause. So then I no longer need this, and I also need to do the top navbar, but I'll get that afterwards. Okay, I'm just thinking. So yeah, now I'm going to go into my stopwatch provider, and start looks fine. Do I need, yeah, I do. Bool get is started. Stop you. And that's just going to return, I'm going to make here, bool is underscore is started equals, it's going to start as false. In fact, do I really need it? I do need it, yeah. And that's just going to return is started. Like that. So when this starts, I also need to set is started equal to true. And notice that now, because I'm using my provider rather than my GetX, I don't need to use .value. However, when I go into things like pause, and in pause, since sw.stop is going to change the is running, which I get from underscore sw.isRunning, that means unlike in GetX, I don't need to set is running manually to false because it's going to do it for me. I don't need to worry about that. Then unpause is going to start that and reset. So same bug as last time. First, I need to stop the timer, the stopwatch. Otherwise, it's going to give me errors. And what am I forgetting here? What do I not have? Because when I do it this way, once it resets and I play, as in timer, I play. Okay, it is working, but I was expecting it to. And so I forgot to change. Well, I didn't forget, I just hadn't changed it yet. So this now goes to state.isStarted. I'm resetting this. Giving it a few seconds because it's running slower than usual. And let's see if this works correctly. Yeah, but notice this keeps running. So I do need to stop that timer, especially because when I do this, when I unpause it, well, it doesn't want to unpause. And do you guys remember why this is? Because when working with provider is not reactive, whereas GetX is. So a reactive state management means that our widgets are listening for the value. We don't have to manually tell them when something changes because it's listening. So something like a GetX and block, which we haven't covered yet, are reactive. I don't need to manually tell it to rebuild. Provider, on the other hand, is not reactive. So I need to actually use this notify listeners. So I'm going to copy this and put it here and put it here. And is this correct? if underscore SW is running. It should be not. And the other thing I want to do is same as last time, t equals this timer, so that I stop this from going as well. That's why I actually left this, so we could see exactly what's happening. So here I'm going to do t dot cancel, and so you can see it's still going after all this time. T dot cancel. And this was in the wrong place. I want to put that into my pause instead. And in my unpause, I want to update SW string. And I really should have given it the exact same name I gave my the one in my timer states, but I recorded the two videos about a week apart because I was busy between. I just completely forgot what I did previously. And I'm thinking if I need to do anything else. I think that's it, but don't quote me on that. So I'm just restarting it, but again, it's quite slow. Going stopwatch, play. Now it's playing, pause, unpause. It's playing. I actually want to try it because I had this the wrong way around. I forgot to put the not. I want to try it without the notify listeners and see if it works. Perhaps I should do a complete restart rather than a reload. I'm gonna go to stopwatch, play, pause. Yeah, so notice when I don't notify the listeners, the timer still stops because, you know, it's supposed to. But because I'm not notifying the listeners, the color isn't changing, and also this button isn't changing to the play button. The timer, on the other hand, is stopping because this function it's kind of separate. This is only running inside the provider, inside the states. It's not running here, right? So that's why the timer can actually stop, but I'm not notified about the other stuff, so this doesn't update and this doesn't update. So I'm going to put those two notify listeners back. And if you guys did try it by yourself, I wouldn't be surprised if you forgot to put your notify listeners and then you got exactly this, and you might have been stuck for a while wondering what's happening. Well, this was what was happening. You forgot notify listeners. So that's all fine. This is working correctly. Well, now I'm going to need to restart it because I changed it again. And the only other thing I'm going to need is that app bar. So just checking to see if it's working. And we can also look on the bottom here. The timer stops exactly how it should. So this is all perfect. The last thing is this app bar. And do I want to extract this widget? I do. Custom app bar. Yeah. So I mentioned in a video a while ago that app bars, and I forget which other widgets I used, are kind of awkward to use as widgets because they extend or they use with some kind of extra widget, and it's just a bit complex. So what I'm going to do instead is extract it as a method instead of doing it as a widget, and I'm going to say build app bar like this. And it's going to take the context and it wants to give me the state. And this time, maybe it's fine. Maybe it's not. Oh, we'll see. I'm going to create a new widget called, I kind of want to call it app bar, but it's not actually app bar. I'm just going to call it app bar because it is supposed to be that, even though it's a function. IMPM. So my VS Code is slower than usual. There we go. And this is not going to take a timer state. Instead, it's going to take a function reset like this. And do I want to call it unpressed? No, I want to call it reset, so it's obvious what it's doing, because I can't just choose any function here. And then that's going to be reset here. That's fine. Did I forget? Yeah. If I have this, so that I had an extra thing there, which means I'm probably missing one here, which I was. Okay, so back into my timer state, I need to import this. That's my timer screen, not timer state. And this is state.reset, like this. And then back here in my stopwatch screen, I'm going to give it the app bar of build app bar. And I need to import this. And now we're going to run into a small issue, because remember last time I thought my state was declared in here, but it turns out I declared it here. So I was able to use it within the app bar perfectly fine. There was no issue. What about here? My state starts here, my consumer is here, my change notifier provider is here. So in my app bar, I don't have access to any of those things. They haven't been declared yet. So that means I can't use the reset button. What's more, I want to show some kind of behavior. If I go back here and go to my timer and go back, I just lost everything. On the other hand, on my timer, I can play it, and this is going. That's fine. I can go into my stopwatch, play this. Notice they're both still playing. When I go back into my timer is still playing and it has the correct value. This hasn't changed. But when I go to my stopwatch, it's not playing anymore. And the reason it's doing is because of where I place my change notifier provider, right? So my change notifier was the body, was inside the body. So when this scaffold was rebuilt, because the entire page gets rebuilt when I switch here, that also rebuilds my provider, which is why I lose all the data I had in it previously. On the other hand, my timer screen was able to keep it because Get was able to do that for me. Now I have a few different ways of solving this. I could make stopwatch provider as a singleton. I could give it a key. There are a few different ways I could fix this, which are quite complicated. But I think the easiest way would just be to move my state up into the main.dart. And by the way, you're seeing this because this is still running in the background. So I'm just going to stop this because I didn't want this output to keep coming up. Okay, so now I need to change this to move up to my main.dart. So if you did try this by yourself, you might have also run into a problem here. So this is now stopwatch screen. Keep in mind, I had changed it to timer screen simply because I was changing, I was refreshing timer screen often. So I wanted to stay on that so I could see it. And I'm also going to have to change back my bottom navbar state, which is here, to start with an index of 0, like that. Okay, so now I get back into that same issue I had previously. My navbar state goes all the way here, which is really high. Well, actually my change notifier provider needs to go in the same place. So as a child, navbar state is going to take my change notifier provider, which needs to be imported. And then change notifier provider, rather than having a child, has a create, where I create the stopwatch provider, and then the child will be the consumer. So let's copy this here. And then I need to import this, fix imports like this. So now I can get rid of this because I have it in main.dart, and I can move the consumer to be above scaffold. So I'm going to wrap this in a widget, and it's going to be consumer stopwatch provider, and this is going to have a builder of context and state and a child widget, which we're not using. And this is just going to return my scaffold directly. So there we go. And now that I have this, I can give my build app bar, I think it just needed the reset, didn't it? State.reset. No, what did it need? Context first. Context of context and reset of state reset. Why is it still giving me an error? The name parameter context isn't defined because I don't get my context until later. CTX. I'm doing something wrong here. Let me just double check. My build app bar. Because I use these as positional when I really should have used them as named parameters. Generally, I prefer named parameters. And now that I have that, the build app bar should be fine. And now in the body, I don't need my change notify provider or my consumer because I put those, I moved them higher. So I can get rid of all of this. This. But now my scaffold goes here, so remove this as well. Now I have another problem, because the way I was doing the previous thing, if this, return this, else return this, I can't do it inside the body here. What I can do, however, I could have a ternary, state.isStarted, question mark, and then I don't need the return. Do that stuff. And else, I no longer need the return here. And this becomes a comma. I don't need this here. Like this. So I believe this is it, but I had an error. Build up found scanner building with a merge. Oh, because I haven't changed it here. Context. Reset. Yeah, I forgot I was also changing the other one, timer. And now let's see what happens. So now this is running. And then the timer, run this. And go back here. This is still running correctly. Go back here. This is still running correctly. So I can pause this. Pause this. Still paused, still paused. Okay, so that is the behavior I expected, and yeah, there we go. So let's do a really quick review. What did we do in this video? So it was quite similar to the previous video, but we did have to make a few changes. First, we pulled out a couple widgets. Specifically, we pulled out the timer running with button, so I didn't have to repeat all that code. And I also pulled out the build app bar, but I pulled that out as a function rather than as a widget, because you guys will remember that the app bar, and I keep forgetting what the other widget is, the app bar and some other widgets, they require us to inherit from other widgets, and it can just become a bit too complex. So I think it's easier just make it as a method, make it as a function, and don't worry about it. So that's what we did here. We had a bit of difficulty with the name parameters. We got a bit confused, but that's fine, and we fixed it in the end. And yeah, then we just updated our stopwatch provider. And notice that unlike GetX, because GetX is reactive and provider is not reactive, we had to manually notify listeners. And as I mentioned, if you guys did try this by yourself, I wouldn't be surprised at all if you forgot to notify listeners and you got quite confused why it wasn't working. Maybe you remembered from my previous video that you needed to do that. So I don't know, maybe it was not an issue for you guys. But this is how you fixed it. And then we also did the t.cancel and added sw.stop. And then that was pretty much it. So, okay, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. I am not 100% sure what the next video is going to be about. There are still a few things I want to do in this timer. And aside from that, I do also want to move on to other state management solutions. I'm not exactly sure when or using which app, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it regardless. So if you did like this video, make sure you like it. If you are not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. But in the meantime, myself, Ovidius, I'm out.